At family dinner I said, "So what's the plan for our vacation?" My sister smirked. "You're not coming, it's for actual family." Everyone laughed. I just left. 2 days later, Dad tried to pull $3,000 from my account for the spa payment. I texted him a screenshot. Declined, real family not found. 3 days later. It was supposed to be a dinner to finalize vacation plans. That's what they told me. Just a casual family evening at my parents' place. Pasta, wine, and a conversation about where we'd all be headed this year. I came with ideas, even printed out a couple of travel options I thought they'd like. I had no clue I'd leave that house so furious I wouldn't speak to any of them for weeks. My mom made her usual effort with the table. White plates, candles, salad no one touched. My dad was in a weirdly good mood, bragging about how his crypto finally turned around, which probably meant he was down less than usual. And Lila was already sipping her second glass of Chardonnay like she owned the place. I waited until everyone had food on their plates. The timing felt right. I smiled and said, "So what's the plan for our vacation?" Lila didn't miss a beat. She looked up, eyes sharp, and said, "You're not coming. It's for actual family." And she smiled. Like it was funny. I waited for someone to say something, anything, but they didn't. My dad snorted, took another bite of lasagna. My mom adjusted her napkin and gave this little half smile like she didn't want to get involved. That was the moment I realized something had been decided behind my back. I just sat there for a second trying to process how casual it all was. No one seemed to think it was strange to exclude me. Lila had moved on to talking about spa packages. My dad was nodding, saying something about how the resort had a no kids section he liked. My mom reached for the bread. I didn't make a scene. Didn't throw a fit. I stood up, walked out the front door and drove home. No plate, no goodbye, no explanation. And just like that I was out. Not just from the trip but from the family. At least that's how it felt. They didn't call. Not that night. Not the day after. And then on day 2 I got the notification. Attempted withdrawal. $3,000. Declined. It was from my dad's name. I stared at the screen, half hoping it was some kind of mistake. But it wasn't. They had actually tried to pull money from the shared account I'd let them use in case of emergencies. An account I funded and they didn't. The same account my dad begged me to set up last year when he temporarily lost access to his own savings. I didn't even argue back then. I just said okay. Because that's what I do. Or did. I took a screenshot of the failed transaction and texted it to him with just one sentence. Declined, real family not found. No reply. 3 days later they showed up at my door. My dad was knocking like he was the sheriff. Lila stood beside him with her sunglasses on, arms crossed like she was ready to press charges. And behind them my mom, clutching a casserole dish like it could fix what happened. They weren't there to talk. They were there to get what they thought they were owed. My dad started throwing around words like responsibility and loyalty. Lila muttered something about me being selfish. My mom said we needed to sit down and sort it out. I didn't invite them in. I didn't explain. I told them the spa wasn't my problem and the account was now locked. Permanently. Lila said they already gave my name to the resort as the one making the payment. That they'd lose the reservation. That it would all go to waste. I said good. Then I closed the door. And I stood there for a while just listening to their voices fade down the hall, and I thought to myself, if they want to go on vacation so badly, fine. Let them go. But they were about to learn what happens when they try to play me like that. They went anyway. A week after that dinner, while I was on my 3rd night eating leftover pad thai alone, Lila started posting photos. Her by an infinity pool, captioned, "Actual family only." My dad shared a blurry selfie in a white robe outside the spa with some nonsense about well-deserved rest. My mom, to her credit, didn't post anything. She just kept forwarding me emails with subject lines like, "Thinking of you," and "Wish you were here," without any actual message inside. She didn't get a response. They had no clue I'd already made a few calls. I knew where they were going. The same luxury spa resort Lila had name-dropped during dinner. Took me all of 5 minutes to find it. The place was ridiculous. Adult-only zones, detox menus, therapists with names like Sage and Ocean. Rooms cost more per night than my monthly rent. I called pretending to be my dad's assistant. Something I knew he'd find deeply insulting if he ever found out. Told them the credit card on file had an issue and that I'd be handling the trip logistics moving forward. I gave them a new email, one I made that morning under the name Michelle R., his supposed travel coordinator. The woman on the phone thanked me for updating the info. That was all I needed. I didn't cancel anything. That would have been too easy, too obvious. What I did instead was make things difficult. Quietly. First, the airport pickup got delayed. Then the massage my mom had booked 3 months in advance mysteriously disappeared from their schedule. The dinner reservation Lila had posted about was downgraded from the rooftop to the hotel's regular dining area after I updated their preferences to say they didn't eat seafood. And the panoramic mountain view suite they had paid extra for? Suddenly overbooked. They were moved to a smaller room facing a loading dock. I didn't invent that part. The front desk actually used those words in an apology email sent to me. But the best part was the refund. A partial refund, offered as compensation for the inconvenience. $800. Automatically issued back to the original card. I didn't spend it. I moved it to a separate folder in my banking app, renamed it Family Get Well Fund. When they got back, they didn't call. They showed up. It was a Sunday. I was in leggings, hair up, scrubbing my stovetop when someone knocked. Pounded. I opened the door with a sponge still in my hand, and there they were again. My dad looked like he'd rehearsed a speech in the car. Lila was flushed, like she was already mid-argument. My mom hovered behind them, holding a little gift bag I'd never end up opening. They didn't waste time. My dad demanded to know if I'd interfered with their trip. Said the resort manager told him the person handling the reservation was listed as Michelle R. and used an email that was clearly fake. Lila jumped in before I could answer. Said I was sick. Jealous. That I needed to grow up and get over it. I didn't deny anything. I didn't raise my voice either. I just looked at them and asked if they really thought they could cut me out, use my money anyway, and not deal with consequences. That set my dad off. He said it wasn't about the money, it was about loyalty. That family was supposed to support each other. I asked if that only applied when they needed something. Because when I needed answers at dinner, all I got was a joke about not being real family. My mom finally tried to calm everyone down, but no one was listening anymore. Then came the line I had saved just for this moment. I told them I spoke with a lawyer. Not to sue them, but to officially dissolve the shared account and put in a fraud alert. That any further attempts to access it would be flagged immediately. And since the original access was informal and never documented, they had no claim to anything. My dad asked why I'd go that far. I told him I was just protecting myself from people who didn't see me as family, until they needed a bill paid. They left. Not one of them said goodbye. My mom stayed behind for a moment, like she wanted to say something but didn't. She just nodded once and turned back down the hall. I stood in the doorway long after the door shut. No tears. No shaking. Just quiet. But I knew this wasn't over. Because people like Lila don't let things go. And she was about to make a move that would blow up in her face harder than anything I'd planned. I knew Lila wouldn't let it go. She's never been the type to accept consequences quietly. If she can't win by yelling, she starts scheming. And sure enough, it didn't take long. 4 days after the showdown at my apartment, my phone started blowing up. Friends, coworkers, even 2 people I hadn't spoken to since college. All sending me the same thing. A post Lila made on Facebook, then reshared on her Instagram story, her TikTok, even LinkedIn. It was a long, dramatic paragraph, written like she was the victim of some toxic betrayal. No names, of course, but enough context to make it obvious who she was talking about. When someone you grew up trusting decides to sabotage your vacation because they weren't invited, you realize blood doesn't mean family. She ended it with one of those fake deep lines she probably stole from a breakup meme. Some people will burn down the whole house just because they weren't in the photo. I didn't respond, but other people did. A few mutual friends commented stuff like, "DM me, girl," and "You deserve better," which is standard for her echo chamber. But then people started asking questions. One person replied, "Wait, wasn't this trip funded by your sister?" Someone else posted a screenshot of an older post Lila had made where she tagged me in a caption that read, "Shout out to my sister for booking the resort, real MVP." She forgot to delete that one. Within hours, the whole thing started unraveling. Lila tried replying to the comments, saying I offered to help, and then went psycho when she changed her mind. Someone else chimed in with a photo from a mutual birthday party, one that I hosted, asking, "Didn't she also cover your birthday last year when your card bounced?" I didn't plant any of this. I didn't have to. People remembered. People noticed. Then it got worse. Someone I barely know, an old friend from high school who now works in hospitality, messaged me privately. Said her cousin actually worked at the resort Lila went to. Apparently, Lila had thrown a full tantrum at the front desk when her spa booking was lost. Screamed at a teenage employee until security had to come talk to her. My friend's cousin wrote it all down in their incident log. So I asked her just out of curiosity if she could send me the report. She did. I posted it anonymously. Blurred names. No location. But the story spoke for itself. A woman screaming in the lobby, threatening to have someone fired over a missing seaweed wrap. Someone in the comments asked, "Is this that influencer meltdown that happened last weekend?" Lila's reputation, at least online, cracked. She locked her comments, then her profile, then took the post down entirely. I could imagine her pacing in her apartment, trying to control the narrative like she always did, completely unaware that this time, there was no narrative to save. She'd written herself into a corner. And I still hadn't said a single word publicly. That night my mom called. I let it ring twice before picking up. She didn't bring up the post. Didn't defend Lila. Just said she was sorry everything had gotten so out of hand. That she didn't know it would blow up like this. That maybe we could all sit down, just the two of us, and talk things through. I said I'd think about it. Then I got another call. Not from her. From someone I hadn't spoken to in years. My aunt. My dad's sister. The one they all pretend doesn't exist because she asks too many questions. He just said, "I've been watching all of this. I think it's time we talk." When my Aunt Diane called, I hadn't spoken to her in over 3 years. Not because of any falling out, but because my dad practically erased her from family gatherings. He said she was too nosy, too opinionated. What he meant was she was the only one who ever challenged him. So when she called and said, "I've been watching all of this. I think it's time we talk," I didn't hesitate. I drove to her house the next afternoon. She lived alone in a quiet suburb, but nothing about her felt small. The second I walked in, she gave me a hug and said, "They always underestimated you." I never did. Then she opened her laptop. She'd done her homework. Turns out, Diane had access to more than just Facebook drama. She'd gone through Lila's recent business filings. Lila was trying to build a wellness brand, something vague and influencer. But in the paperwork, Aunt Diane found something weird. My dad listed as a silent partner. On paper, he technically owned 40%. They had merged accounts. Not just bank accounts, business ones. And that meant one thing. The money my dad tried pulling from me? It wasn't just for the spa. It was to front one of Lila's launch events. A private resort event they planned to turn into branded content for her followers. The family vacation was actually a business stunt. And I was never supposed to be on that trip because they couldn't risk me asking questions or noticing the cameras or posting something that didn't fit their curated story. That snapped something in me. I wasn't just excluded. I was strategically erased. Aunt Diane was furious. She said my dad always used people, their parents, her, now me, and that it was time someone held him accountable. I thought she meant a confrontation. But Diane had other plans. She told me she'd already booked a meeting with my dad under the pretense of resolving family tension. What he didn't know was that she had invited a mediator, a legal one. Her friend from college who now works with family-owned businesses when money gets mixed in with emotion. I asked if that was even necessary. She looked at me and said, "If you don't want justice, that's fine. But if you want clarity and control, show up." So I did. The meeting was at a neutral office in the city. Glass walls. Quiet. Clinical. My dad walked in looking annoyed, probably expecting some apology session. Lila showed up 10 minutes late in full glam like she thought someone might be filming it. The mediator explained why we were there. My dad tried to laugh it off, said this was a waste of time. But then Diane pulled out printed documents, tax filings, business registration records, the attempted withdrawal from my account. Lila's expression shifted. My dad stopped smiling. Diane laid out everything calmly. No yelling. No drama. Just facts. She asked if they planned to pay me back. If they were going to explain why they tried to steal from me under the guise of a family trip. If they even felt the slightest bit guilty for exploiting someone they supposedly loved. My dad said something weak about it being a misunderstanding. Lila said nothing. Then the mediator asked if I wanted to take legal action. I didn't answer right away. But then I looked at my dad and said, "If you ever try to access my accounts again, I will press charges. If you use my name or my money or even my face to promote her business without permission, I will sue both of you. And this time I'll make it public." Lila said I was bluffing. So I pulled out my phone and played the voicemail she'd left 2 weeks ago where she said, "You owe us this. You owe us the spa. Just pay it, Emily, don't be a freak." The room went silent. The mediator just nodded and said that counts. We ended the meeting with one condition. They'd sign a document stating they would never attempt to use my identity or financial info again, and that all debts between us, spoken or unspoken, were closed. If they breached it, I'd take them to court. They signed it. Diane smiled, thanked the mediator, and walked out like she just wrapped up a meeting at the Pentagon. I followed her. Outside, she turned to me and said, "You're not done yet. But now you've got leverage." I asked her what she meant. She said, "Wait till Thanksgiving. That's when it all comes full circle." I thought she was joking. But she wasn't. Because what happened at Thanksgiving changed everything. Thanksgiving used to be my favorite holiday. Food, no pressure for gifts, everyone in one place. Simple. This year it felt like a trap. I almost didn't go. After everything that happened, The spa, the failed business stunt, the public fallout. I figured it was better to keep my distance. But Aunt Diane said show up. Let them see you're not hiding. They won't know what to do with that. So I showed up. The moment I walked in, the room stiffened. My dad was carving a turkey he clearly didn't cook. Lila was already holding a wine glass she didn't need. My mom looked at me like she was grateful I even walked through the door. Diane was already there, sitting at the table like she owned the place. No one said anything outright, but the tension sat in the air like smoke. We went through the motions, passing dishes, fake laughing at nothing, pretending like this wasn't the first time we were all in the same room since everything exploded. And then dessert happened. Lila stood up and said she had an announcement. I braced myself. She said her wellness brand, the same one that was supposed to launch at that now infamous spa trip, had officially signed a contract with a major distributor. That she was launching a product line in January. That she would be featured in a magazine. Everyone clapped. Even my mom reluctantly. Then she looked right at me and said, and I just want to say, despite everything, I forgive those who didn't support me. It just pushed me harder. The silence after that was heavy. I could feel Diane shift beside me. She leaned toward me slightly and whispered, let it sit. Don't speak yet. Lila kept talking. Bragging really. About connections, growth, hustle. All the buzzwords. And then she said something that didn't sit right. She said, and thanks to some unexpected help from family, we got the funding we needed to secure this deal. I froze. Because that wasn't true. She hadn't gotten anything from me. And the account was locked. Plus, Diane sat up straight. What help? She asked flat out. Lila smiled. Said it's private. But don't worry. It's handled. My mom looked confused. My dad stayed quiet. And that's when I pulled out my phone. I logged into my banking app. Not the one they tried to steal from, but a newer one I kept completely separate, and showed Diane a recent alert. A fraud attempt. Someone tried to open a credit card under my name 2 weeks ago. I hadn't brought it up because I didn't know who it was. Now I did. I looked at Lila and asked, did you use my name again? She rolled her eyes, but she didn't answer. My dad finally spoke. He said something about how sometimes family just needs to find creative solutions and we've all borrowed things before. My mom dropped her fork. Diane pulled out her phone and started recording. Lila shouted for her to stop, but Diane kept the camera rolling. She asked my dad, did you authorize your daughter to use Emily's identity again? After signing a legal agreement that said you wouldn't? He froze. Lila stormed off. And I just sat there watching the house my dad built. This image of perfect curated family, finally start to collapse. My mom said nothing. Just looked at me like she finally saw things clearly for the first time in years. Diane stopped recording and stood up. We're done here, she said. Everyone stayed frozen while she walked out. I followed. In the driveway, she turned to me and said, you're going to want to check your email tomorrow morning. I've got one more surprise for them. I asked what it was. She said, think of it as a formal invitation. To the reunion. I blinked. Reunion? She smiled. At your place. Their names are on the catering bill. But you're hosting. And this time, you're the one deciding who gets to sit at the table. The email came just after sunrise. Aunt Diane never sleeps in. Subject. Family reunion, November 30th, 6 p.m., Emily's house. To me, my dad, my mom, Lila. There were no long explanations. Just a few lines. She wrote that families don't fix themselves unless someone forces the issue, and that too much damage had been done already. So she arranged a reunion, full catering, drinks, live music, a little overdue honesty, and a guest list limited to blood. The last line of the email hit hard. Funding provided by Thomas and Lila Blake, in honor of past vacations and future amends. I stared at that sentence for a while, smiling. They didn't respond for a full day. Then Lila posted a selfie with a caption about staying unbothered through chaos, and replied with a fake cheerful looking forward to it. My dad didn't reply at all. Just showed up. The night of the reunion, my house barely looked like mine. Diane had brought in a full team, chefs, servers, even a bartender. There were candles everywhere, floral centerpieces that smelled like they cost too much, and soft jazz coming from a real piano in the corner. Diane had paid for the whole setup first, but only temporarily. The real bill had been redirected to where it belonged. People started arriving at 6 on the dot. My mom came first, holding an apple pie like it could erase everything. She gave me a quiet hug and looked genuinely relieved to be invited. Then came my dad, stiff in a blazer he hadn't worn since my college graduation, eyes scanning the room like he was waiting for a fight. And last, Lila, hair curled, fake lashes, and a gift bag in hand like we were celebrating something. Dinner was quiet. Too quiet. Everyone eating, nodding politely, pretending they didn't completely implode 3 weeks ago. Until Diane stood up. She tapped her glass and said, I want to thank everyone for coming. It's not every day a family gets the chance to do something rare. Sit down, face each other, and try again. People clapped lightly. My dad didn't. Dessert came out next. 3 kinds of pie, espresso, and 3 sealed gold envelopes placed in front of my dad, Lila, and my mom. I already knew what was inside. Diane's idea. My execution. They each opened theirs. My mom's envelope held a thank you note and a printed photo of me and her from when I was a kid, taped to the back with a sticky note that read, "Still here. Still trying." But Lila and my dad? They got bills. A detailed invoice from the catering company. Full service event. $6,472. Line items for food, staffing, floral design, live music, a bartender, event prep, custom desserts, and even valet. Diane insisted on valet. At the bottom, billed to Thomas Blake and Lila Blake. Paid in full. Lila turned red before the second page. My dad stared at the total for so long I wondered if he was trying to calculate it into denial. Then came the real kicker. A small line item Diane had slipped in herself. Emotional damages, non-refundable $1. Memo, for Emily. Lila looked at me and muttered, "This is a joke, right?" I didn't answer. My dad finally said, "You expect us to just laugh at this?" Diane leaned forward, totally calm. "Well, we expect you to sit with the reality that your actions cost you something." For once, literally. My mom didn't say a word. Just kept her eyes on the photo in her hand. For the first time, my dad didn't fight back. He folded the invoice neatly, slid it back in the envelope, and said, "Fine. Consider it paid." He stood up, muttered something to himself, and walked out. Lila stayed seated, frozen in place, as if leaving meant accepting what just happened. And I finally breathed. It wasn't victory. Not the dramatic movie kind. It was something quieter. Thought. Like balance being restored. They didn't speak to me for a few days after. No apology. No phone calls. Until a week later I got an email from Lila. Not public. Not performative. Just a subject line that said "You were right," and a paragraph where she admitted she'd gone too far. That she thought being included was owed to her, and that she never considered how much I'd carried over the years. She said my silence after that dinner hurt more than yelling ever could. 2 days later my dad called. He didn't apologize. He never will, not directly. But he said something had changed. Said he wanted to do something real for the family this time. I told him I wasn't stopping him.